It began like any other late-night appearance. The lights, the applause, the band easing into a playful riff as Seth Meyers walked across the stage. He was confident. This was his house, his stage, his crowd. And tonight, he had booked one of the biggest names alive, Taylor Swift. The audience cheered thunderously as she stepped out, dressed in her effortless mix of glamour and precision. She waved, she smiled, and she slid into the guest chair like a seasoned professional who had done this 1,000 times before. But what no one realized, not even Seth, was that this would not be a routine interview. This would become a reckoning. Ladies and gentlemen, Seth grinned, Taylor Swift is here, which means I'll try not to get roasted too badly tonight. It was meant as a throwaway line. A little joke to acknowledge her reputation for lyrical sharpness and clever comebacks. But Taylor leaned forward, smirked, and fired back without missing a beat. Oh, don't worry, Seth. I saved my best roast for people who deserve it. The crowd erupted. Cheers, laughter, applause. It was a kind of reaction that flips the power dynamic instantly. And just like that, the roles had shifted. Taylor wasn't the guest anymore. She was the one holding court. You could feel the tension ripple across the room. What was supposed to be a friendly celebrity chat had morphed into something sharper. Seth chuckled nervously, trying to play it off. Guess I'll just cross my fingers that I don't make that list tonight. Taylor leaned back, crossed her legs, and gave him the kind of look that said, "Oh, you already have." The audience howled. And here's the truth. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was about control. Seth Meyers, the wry, sarcastic late-night anchor, was suddenly on defensive, and Taylor Swift, global superstar, songwriter, billionaire brand, had just walked into his courtroom and taken a gavel. On the surface, it was just banter. But if you dig deeper, the stakes were massive. Taylor Swift isn't just a singer. She's an empire. Her name moves markets. Her concerts break economic records in cities. Her music catalog is worth more than some tech startups. And Seth Meyers? He's sharp, he's funny. But he's also part of a late-night ecosystem struggling to stay relevant in a world dominated by streaming platforms and social media clips. Every viral moment counts. Every exchange is currency. So when Taylor roasted him live, this wasn't just comedy. It was a fight for narrative dominance. And Seth was realizing he wasn't in control anymore. Taylor Swift, the pop titan, known for her lyrical precision, her ability to flip heartbreak into billion-dollar art, and her growing reputation as someone who doesn't just take hits. She turns them into weapons. Seth Meyers, the witty night owl, a master of sarcasm, political jabs, and deadpan delivery, but also a host whose show often rides a line between sharp commentary and safe banter. The audience, not just viewers, a live jury. Every laugh, every gasp, every clap tilts a verdict one way or another. Tonight, they weren't passive. They were ready to crown a winner. So, Seth, Taylor said sweetly, you spend every night making fun of politicians and celebrities, but I've heard some of your Spotify playlists. Let's just say your taste in music could be a crime. The crowd burst out laughing. Seth's eyes widened in mock horror. Hey, those playlists are curated chaos. Taylor grinned, more like guilty evidence. It was playful, but it stung, because Taylor had flipped Seth's own persona against him. He was usually the one exposing others, holding them accountable with sarcasm. Now, she was holding him accountable with sharper timing than he expected. The audience began to sense it. This wasn't just Taylor being charming. This was Taylor taking over. Each punchline landed harder than Seth's attempts to recover, and the crowd rewarded her with louder and louder laughs. Here's what you need to know. In late-night television, laughs are votes. They're the currency of dominance. And in the first 10 minutes of this segment, Taylor had stacked the jury box entirely in her favor. But the real question, the one hanging heavy in the studio, the one the internet would ask minutes later, was this. How far would Taylor go? Would she keep it playful? Or would she escalate, digging into Seth with the kind of lyrical precision she uses to dismantle ex-boyfriends, rival executives, and even billion-dollar corporations? Because if she did, Seth wasn't ready. The camera zoomed in on Seth's uneasy grin. His job was to stay in control, to guide the interview, to keep the show flowing. But everyone in the room felt it. He was slipping. The power dynamic had shifted, and Taylor Swift was steering the ship. Seth leaned in, trying to regain footing. Taylor, listen, I make fun of everyone, politicians, celebrities, even myself. But I didn't think I'd have to defend myself against you. Taylor didn't miss a beat. You've been doing monologues about everyone else's scandals for years. I figure it was about time you got a headline. The audience howled. People clapped so hard the applause drowned out Seth's attempt to fire back. He laughed, but his laugh had that nervous edge. The kind of laugh you hear when someone knows the ground beneath them is crumbling. Every late-night audience has its rhythm. Sometimes they're passive, waiting for punchlines. But tonight, they were active. Every time Taylor spoke, the cheers came quicker, louder. When Seth tried to counter, the laughs were thinner, delayed. It wasn't just comedy anymore. It was judgment. The audience wasn't neutral. They were becoming a live jury, and their verdict was clear. Taylor was winning. Okay, Seth said, raising his hands like a referee calling timeout. You're Taylor Swift. Billionaire, pop icon, lyrical assassin. But you've also had your share of, how do I say this, questionable dance moves. The crowd laughed. Finally, Seth landed one. He smirked. The scale seemed to balance for a split second. Taylor smiled, that dangerous, knowing smile. She leaned closer to Seth's desk. Oh, Seth, you see my dance moves? That's sweet, but I've seen your monologues. And let's just say, between the two of us, only one of us gets invited back on tour. Explosion. The audience roared. Some jumped to their feet. The band even hit a rim shot, like they had just witnessed a knockout punch. Here's the secret. Seth had gone personal, poking fun at Taylor's dance skills, a common joke. But Taylor flipped it into a career comparison. She didn't just defend herself. She reframed Seth as the underdog in his own house, in front of his own crowd. And in the world of late night, perception is everything. The host is supposed to be untouchable, the one who steers, jabs, controls. But Taylor had turned Seth into the punchline. Seth rubbed his face dramatically. I knew this was a mistake. I should have booked someone safer. Like, I don't know, a senator who hates me. Taylor smirked, shaking her head. No, Seth, this is what happens when you play with fire. Except this fire comes with a stadium tour and $1 billion brand. The crowd laughed, clapped, whistled. Someone in the balcony shouted, Get him, Taylor! What happened next showed just how masterful Taylor was at reading the room. She turned slightly to face the audience and said, Guys, you've been watching him roast politicians for years. Isn't it kind of fun to see him squirm for once? The audience went wild. They weren't just laughing at Seth anymore. They were with Taylor, actively rooting for her. She had flipped the frame entirely. Seth wasn't the judge anymore. He was a defendant. And Taylor? She was both the prosecutor and the star witness. This wasn't just entertainment. It was symbolism. Taylor Swift isn't just a pop star. She's a cultural force. Her words, her music, her movements ripple into economics, politics, technology. Cities calculate her tours into their GDP. Politicians reference her to connect with young voters. Streaming platforms beg for her catalog because her songs shift entire stock prices. So when she dismantled Seth Meyers live on a show, it wasn't just a roast. It was a metaphor, a superstar showing that even the old guard of late-night TV isn't immune to being outshined, outsmarted, and outplayed. Taylor, Seth said, gripping his desk like a man trying to hold steady on a rocking boat. I write jokes for a living. You write breakup songs. Maybe we should stick to our lanes. The crowd gasped. A bold move. He was swinging hard now. Taylor didn't blink. Oh, Seth, I don't just write breakup songs. I write billion-dollar tours. I write cultural anthems. I write the soundtrack people dance to at their weddings. Will you write again? Oh, right. Jokes that even your guests sometimes don't laugh at. Detonation. The audience lost it. Cheers, screams, applause. Seth covered his face with his hands, pretending to hide. But in that moment, it was clear he wasn't hiding from the joke. He was hiding from the truth. Here's a critical moment. Seth Meyers, the host, had lost the crowd. Not temporarily. Not just for a punchline. For the entire segment. And Taylor Swift? She wasn't even breaking a sweat. Her delivery was calm, measured, playful, like someone strumming a guitar. But every word hit with the force of a chorus that the entire world already knew by heart. The audience wasn't just laughing. They were chanting. A chant started in the back rows, then grew louder. Taylor, Taylor, Taylor. The cameras caught it. The internet would replay it endlessly. A chant in Seth Meyers' house. Not for Seth, but for his guests who had just turned his show into her courtroom. By this point, one question hung in the air like smoke. Would Seth recover? Could he claw back the authority that had slipped through his fingers? Or would Taylor finish what she started and leave him with nothing but applause? Applause that wasn't for him? Because the audience wasn't done. And Taylor Swift had more to say. The chant didn't stop when the cameras cut to commercial. In fact, it grew louder. Audience members were on their feet, phones glowing, recorded what felt less like a talk show and more like a cultural event. And here's the thing about live TV in the age of social media. It doesn't stay in the room. It spills everywhere instantly. By the time the second commercial ended, hashtags were already climbing into the global trending list. Hashtag Taylor roast Seth. Hashtag SwiftTakeover. Hashtag Seth in shambles. The internet had already chosen sides. On TikTok, clips of Taylor's line, "Only one of us gets invited back on tour," were looping endlessly. Teenagers added captions, "The way she ended him skull." Others remixed the moment with her own lyrics, turning the roast into a beat drop. On Twitter, the thread wars began. Taylor just ended Seth Meyers on his own show. This wasn't an interview. This was an execution. Justice for Seth, but also, he kind of deserved it. Even Instagram lit up. Swifties flooded comment sections with memes of Taylor holding a gavel, labeling her Judge Swift. It was no longer about late-night comedy. It was about dominance in the digital coliseum. By the next morning, the fallout had entered the mainstream press. Headlines read like verdicts. Entertainment Weekly. Taylor Swift turns late night into a courtroom and wins. Variety. When guests take over, Taylor Swift dismantles Seth Meyers in viral segment. Forbes. The economics of a roast. How Swift's 30 seconds sent CPM rates through the roof. Yes, even the finance world joined in. Because when Taylor Swift sneezes, markets listen. Advertisers notice a spike in engagement, and ad slots connected to Seth's show jumped overnight. One insider leaked that a 30-second pre-roll during the uploaded clip hit 5 times the usual rate. Seth may have been roasted, but NBC's ad sales team was popping champagne. Behind the scenes, the fallout rippled across the entertainment world. Bookers for rival shows scrambled. One emailed a celebrity's manager, "We need a viral segment this week. Something that breaks the internet like Swift did." Another network whispered internally, "If guests keep hijacking hosts like this, we lose control of narrative. Rethink the format." Seth's producers were in damage control. One wrote in a memo, "Frame the roast as playful. Clip it for socials. Caption it with emojis. Make it look intentional." But the truth? Everyone knew it wasn't planned. Taylor had taken the wheel. The internet doesn't just watch, it forms armies. Team Taylor. They flooded the timeline with edits. One fan cut together a mock trial video with Taylor as prosecutor, Seth as defendant, and the audience as jury. The caption, "Court is now in session." Another fan turned the chant into a techno remix, already streamed 1 million times. Team Seth, smaller but vocal. They defended him. He's a comedian. Getting roasted is part of the job. Others argued, Taylor should respect the host. It's a show, not hers. But numbers don't lie. Team Taylor clips pulled millions of views. Team Seth barely cracked 6 figures. The imbalance was brutal. It wasn't long before other celebrities weighed in. Jimmy Fallon tweeted, "Note to self, never book Taylor Swift unless I'm ready to be roasted faced with tears of joy." James Corden posted a picture of himself hiding under a desk with the caption, "Me if Taylor came on my show." But the most telling reaction came from Trevor Noah, who wrote, "Seth learned last night that late-night hosts aren't the only ones who know how to land a punchline." The entertainment world was eating it up. Taylor wasn't just a guest anymore. She had become the story. Here's where the stakes turned from personal to financial. Clips of Taylor's roast generated millions of ad impressions across YouTube, TikTok, and NBC's digital platforms. Analysts estimated the single segment generated over $5 million in earned media value within 24 hours. Seth had been roasted, but his network? They were cashing in. One executive was overheard saying, "If humiliation sells, give me a double order." The irony was perfect. Seth's loss of dignity was NBC's gain in revenue. And Taylor? She didn't need the money, but she owned the headlines. What made the roast resonate wasn't just the jokes. It was the symbolism. Taylor Swift represented a new kind of power. The artist who controls her narrative, who outmaneuvers corporations, who rewrites contracts in her favor. Seth Meyers represented the old guard. Clever, sharp, but ultimately bound to a desk, a format, a network. So when she roasted him into silence, people saw more than comedy. They saw a cultural handoff. A superstar who built an empire, reminding a late-night host that the balance of power had shifted. The next day, Seth tried to laugh it off. He posted a behind-the-scenes photo with Taylor. Caption, "Note to self, never challenge a songwriter who can end me in 4 lines." It was smart, self-deprecating, an attempt to control the narrative. And fans loved it. Comments flooded in with laughing emojis, and even Taylor replied with a wink. But no matter how much he played it off, the story was already written. Seth Meyers had been roasted into submission on his own show. And here's the lingering question that kept the internet buzzing. Would Taylor let it end there? Or would she, as she so often does, turn the moment into something bigger? A lyric in a song? A callback at a concert? A reference in an award speech? Because if there's one thing everyone knows about Taylor Swift, it's this. Nothing is ever just a moment. Every roast, every headline, every viral clip becomes part of a bigger story. The world waited to see how she would close the loop. The band eased into a hush, a soft cymbal shimmer that felt like breath before a verdict. The audience, our live jury, had laughed, cheered, and chosen sides in real time. And yet, something told me the night still had one more turn, one more exchange that would etch itself into memory of late-night lore. Seth glanced at the clock above camera 2. You could see the arithmetic in his eyes. Minutes left, beats to hit, dignity to reclaim. Taylor sat poised, relaxed, the performer who knows the encore's hers whenever she asks for it. Then Seth did something smart, something deeply human. He stood, tugged his jacket straight, and stepped out from behind his desk. No fortress, no barrier, just a host and a guest, face to face, the stage lights flattening every pretense. "Taylor," he said, voice level, "you've roasted me 6 different ways, and I walked into all of them. But I've got one thing left, the monologue, and I'd like to share it with you." The room crackled. It wasn't surrender. It was a pivot, an invitation to end this not as a duel, but as a duet. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for the twist. Taylor lifted an eyebrow. Curiosity, not suspicion. "A co-monologue?" Seth nodded. "A co-monologue. You do your lyric magic. I do my joke scaffolding. We aim it at something bigger than me." Taylor took a half step closer, the faintest smile igniting the upper rows. "As long as we're not pulling punches." "Never," Seth said, and the band laid out completely. You could feel the silence become architecture. "Seth, every night, I come out here and poke holes in the day's madness. It's catharsis in a suit. But sometimes a joke turns into a mirror, and I don't love what I see." Taylor, every album, I turn chaos into chorus. It's armor in 4/4 time. But sometimes the chorus gets louder than the conversation, and I have to remember why I started singing in the first place. Seth, we roast because it's safer than confession. Taylor, we confess because it's braver than pretending. Seth, tonight I got roasted. Taylor, tonight I did the roasting. Together. And maybe both of those things were necessary. Applause broke like surf, wave after wave, a rhythm the room could ride. But they weren't done. The sequence rolled on, polished and raw at once, like two professionals building a bridge while they walked across it. Seth, there's an economy to all this. Rating CPMs, the algorithm's invisible leash. Taylor, there's a heartbeat under it. People, stories, a reason to keep showing up. Seth, we can chase heat. Taylor, or we can carry light. Seth, tonight had both. Taylor, let's end with light. The ovation swelled, then softened into a focused hush. Because everyone felt it. The finale was coming. Seth squared his shoulders. Taylor, if you had one line one I couldn't duck, deflect, or punchline, what would it be? Taylor smiled, the kind that tells you the arrow is already notched. She turned slightly toward the audience, the jury, the chorus, the country of eyes, and delivered it clean. When the room gives you the mic, don't just make noise, make meaning. It landed with a stillness that follows a bell. No cymbals, no band tag, just silence, then a detonation of applause from 1,000 hands trying to say thank you all at once. Seth nodded, accepting the blow and the benediction in one gesture. Then tonight, he said, you made meaning, and, okay, you made me a meme. Laughter cascaded, warm now, not weaponized. Taylor stepped in and offered what the story had been begging for, grace. I roast the people I respect, she said, because I expect them to rise. Seth's grin turned genuine. Challenge accepted. So who won? If we're tallying punches, Taylor out-timed him, out-framed him, and out-charmed a room designed to be his home field. If we're scoring recoveries, Seth stage one in the only currency that matters after Spiral. Humility. He met the moment, named it, and flipped the format to share power instead of hoarding it. The jury, that audience, rendered a nuanced verdict. They cheered Taylor as the night's champion, yes. But when Seth walked back behind the desk for the closing toss, they cheered him too, the applause saying, you took the heat, you chose the light. Online, the split was just as layered. Hashtag SwiftTakeover hammered the global feeds, but a second wave rose behind it. Hashtag make meaning. Clips of the co-monologue traveled with subtitles in 6 languages. A civics teacher stitched it with a note. Show your students how discourse can sting and still build. A brand quietly redirected budget to the show's next week of uploads. The finance blogs, never far from a good stampede, highlighted the double spike. Engagement and sentiment, a rare pair. There was again heat and light. Backstage, a laminated rundown lay on a stool with a coffee ring spreading over the words comedy beat number 3. It made me think about the invisible labor these nights. Writers in rooms with too little air, segment producers juggling chaos and charm, bookers threading needles no one sees. They'd planned a standard set. They got a cultural moment, and they turned it not with panic but with craft. In the control room, a producer scribbled a note on the whiteboard. Leave space for risk. Another circled it and added, and for recovery. Meanwhile, the money machine did what it always does when art lands just right. Pre-roll sold out. A liveried sponsor asked to shift copy to reference making meaning. The network analytics team lit up charts like holiday windows. It's not that commerce corrupted the moment. It's that the moment was strong enough to convert commerce into chorus. For once. After the credits, Seth and Taylor met at the lip of the stage. No cameras, no choreo. He thanked her. She thanked him back. It didn't sound like truce. It sounded like understanding. You pushed me, he said. You held, she said. They laughed a small laugh of two professionals who know the real performance is how you treat the room after the room is gone. A stagehand, still wearing a headset streaked with gaffer's tape, snapped a photo for them on a phone with a cracked screen. No PR angles. No grids. Just two people who built a night worth remembering standing in the rubble they had the good sense to call a cathedral. We say late night is a desk and a couch. It isn't. It's a contract. Between host and guest, truth and timing, audience and appetite. Break the contract carelessly, and you get chaos. Break it intentionally, and you get this. Taylor held the mic like a scalpel and cut to the thesis. Make meaning. She did it with heat, jokes that stung and strutted, and with light, grace that asked the room to leave better than arrived. Seth took the sting, then chose a higher note, inviting collaboration over control. That choice kept his show from being the scene of defeat and turned it into the site of a decision. What kind of noise do we want from our nights? Laughter that anesthetizes? Outrage that atomizes? Or craft that synthesizes both into something you can carry into morning? The night suggested an answer. We want a laugh that remembers why it's laughing. When the story started, the hook was simple. Taylor Swift hilariously roasted Seth Meyers on his own show. The promise in your thumbnail, she destroys him, wasn't a lie so much as an opening move. Because destruction alone is boring. Anyone can tear. Not everyone can repair. The loop closes like this. Taylor did dismantle the host guard. Cleanly, cleverly, completely. And then, when it mattered, she built something in its place. A line to live by. A stage shared. A night that earned the replay button for more than the roast. As I stepped out onto 49th Street, the air carried the ordinary shimmer of post-show New York. Steam vents hissed. Cabs argued and horned. A tourist posed a foam finger from a game that ended 3 hours earlier. My phone pinged twice. One alert for #SwiftTakeover. One for #MakeMeaning. And a third from a friend who doesn't watch much TV. Send me the clip where they stop trying to win and start trying to say something. I sent it. Then I wrote back. That's the real ending. If tomorrow handed you a mic, at work, at home, online, would you settle for noise? Or would you risk the roast with a bruise and aim for meaning? Because the circus needs a ringmaster, and the fire still needs a hose. But the night only becomes history when someone insists the punchline points somewhere true. Tonight, the punchline did. And that's why the room didn't just chuckle. It changed.